Was that live? Okay, welcome everybody to I believe that this might be the 7th meeting of the Berkeley History Club. There has been 8 for sure. So if you're with us tonight, just remember, you might want to write this on your calendar when you get home. I attended the 7th meeting of the Berkeley History Club. So great to see everybody, and great to see you out on Zoom, wherever you are in the YouTube world. Great to see you guys there also. Anybody want to wave to them? All right, great, thanks. Let's see. I want to thank Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists for supporting community building, allowing us to come use this building, and just a description of what the Unitarian religion is. To me, it's kind of still blows my mind. I've been a Unitarian for about 10 years now, I guess. They have no creed, so they won't tell you what to believe. I'm not used to that. But anyway, if you want to learn more, you know where to find information about that. So let's see. Tonight, let's see. So if you're sitting here, I'm looking at all of you, or you're on Zoom and you want to come, you're on your YouTube and you want to come to our next meeting and you'd like to give a speech. We have openings in the future for it could be as short as 5 minutes. Just be prepared for questions and answers afterwards. And the only criteria is it has to be about something in the past. So we're talking about history. And let's see. Yesterday, if you bring a nice dessert for us to share, you could do yesterday. Okay. So official. And I want to let you know that if you want to be an official member of the Berkeley History Club, there's one benefit that you get. You get to pick the next speakers. So so far we only have one official member, but I'm happy to spread out the power. So come join, become members, and my power will be diluted, and you guys will have the power of picking the next members. Brett. The history of the History Club. That was a joke. Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad that was a joke. So anyway, I'm going to start off tonight talking about the historical Jesus. And we're going to do a little review. It takes about 5 minutes to review. For some of you who haven't gone to the first 6 meetings, 5 of them are on YouTube, so you can watch them if you want. And we'll just do a little review and catch you all up. First, we're going to talk about Jesus' grandpa of Jesus. Okay, his name was Hezekiah. So, I'll go on. Who would ever think that we could come up with a grandfather of Jesus? Right? Blows my mind. So Hezekiah, he was a bandit. The Romans would call him a bandit. Leste, that's the Greek word. Anyway, if you're Jewish, you would call him a freedom fighter, right? He lived in the northern part of he was most likely from Jerusalem. And when he decided to become a freedom fighter, he collected men around him. And where freedom fighters always go, where do they go? Mountains, borders, they always go to the borders, right? Mountains, borders, so you can escape when the Romans are catching up with you. You jump across the border, you're fairly safe across the border. So that's where he went. There in the north part of the country. The historian Josephus calls him like a freedom fighter, basically. But he doesn't say he used violence, but he probably did. But there's some debate about that. So there we go. Hezekiah, the freedom fighter Hezekiah. And he had a son, which would be Jesus' father, Judas, son of Hezekiah. And now the first thought, you said, what about Joseph? I thought Joseph was his father. Well, this guy, being the son of a notorious bandit, right, a notorious guerrilla fighter, he had to keep his identity secret pretty much his whole life. So he ended up picking a lot of aliases for himself. And when he moved to Nazareth, he picked the alias Joseph. We'll get a little bit later why he picked the name Joseph. But anyway, there he is, Judas, son of Hezekiah. That was our man, Jesus' father. Now, like I said, the Hezekiah family would be Hezekiah's wife, his son, baby, Judas, and whatever children they had, when Hezekiah went off to fight, they had to go hide. Because back then, if the Romans knew that you were a guerrilla fighter, what they would do is they would grab your relatives and your friends, hold them hostage. And then if you don't turn yourself in, they're going to, kill your relatives, torture, send them off as slaves. At least they would sell them off as slaves. So that's how they operated back then. So this family, the wife of Hezekiah and the baby Judas, which is our hero Joseph coming up pretty soon, they had to leave Jerusalem while their husband and dad was fighting the Romans. So where'd they go? They went to a town called Sepphoris. And where are we at? So Sepphoris. So here we have Nazareth, and here's Sepphoris, only 4 miles apart. So what they did, the original Hezekiah family, while Hezekiah was fighting up here, his wife and babies there, however many kids he had, we don't know, but they go to Sepphoris. Sepphoris was the capital city of the Galilee province, right next to Nazareth, like about an hour walk. You can walk from one to the other. So we don't know the name of, Judas grows up, gets married, and gets trained as a rabbi. He marries wife number 1. We don't know her name, unfortunately, but he gets trained as a rabbi, possibly by the Essenes. Back then, if you had a baby boy and you couldn't take care of him, you can give him to the Essenes, and they would train him in the law, in the Torah, right? And so they were spread out through the whole country. There's about 4,000 of them spread out through the whole country, and they would be, of course, in Sepphoris, the capital city of Galilee. So that might have been what the wife did, was loaned her son, her baby, and let the Essenes raise him up. So anyway, he grows up, is a great rabbi. He wasn't like your regular run-of-the-mill rabbi. This guy, as a rabbi, was described as there's only 2 rabbis in the whole 1st century in all of our records that is described as being like clever. They could attract people from the whole country to come hear them speak. It was our man Judas, Joseph, right? And another rabbi named Matthew. So anyway, this guy, Judas, he gets married, and he has some kids, Jair, James, and Simon. Has 3 boys, probably has some girls. So he's raising his family. And then he gets promoted, he moves to Jerusalem, and he's teaching there with Matthew. He's there for a while, and then Matthew and Judas, along with his students, decide to rebel against Roman authority. They attack a statue. It was an icon placed over the main entrance to the temple. It was an eagle, a wooden carved eagle covered with gold. This is called the Golden Eagle Affair, if you want to look it up in your history books. They attacked that, and then middle of the day, it wasn't like a nighttime thing. Judas gave him a speech, according to Josephus, our historian. We only have really 2 sources for all this information. Josephus, the historian, wrote in the 1st century. He wrote a big tome, and that's our main source. And there's also the New Testament and early Christian writings. So that's about it. So anyway, he moves to Jerusalem. And there with Matthew, he inspires the students to attack the golden eagle, to tear it down. They did it in the middle of the day, and then the Roman soldiers came out and started arresting everybody. They grabbed Matthew, burned him at the stake, grabbed 40 students, killed all of them, but Judas escapes. So he goes, like any fugitive would do, he went back to his hometown, and to get support and stuff like that. Right about then, Herod died right about that time. The year is 4 BCE. Herod dies, and a revolt takes place over the whole country. And in Galilee, that was the place where Judas, our man Joseph, he takes over the revolt in Galilee. he takes on heirs as a king, as a royal person, right? And the only people that had the right to be a king back then, there were two qualifications. One, you had to be the son of David, and two, you're supposed to be anointed by the high priest. So those are the minimum qualifications you had to be a king. And our man Joseph, according to Josephus, he presented himself like a king in Sepphoris. He takes over the militia, and he takes over the whole province and plunders the whole province. Okay?
Was Herod a Jew or was he a Palestinian?
Herod was an Idumean. He was considered like a half-Jew. I believe his dad was an Idumean, which the Idumeans, I'm probably pronouncing it the wrong way, were forced by the Jewish people years earlier to be circumcised and to become Jews. So he was not considered a real Jew, but he was like you can call him a half Jew. After this revolt, the Romans marched down and took the whole country back and put the whole country back under their power, and including they took over Sepphoris again, burning about a third of it to the ground, according to the archaeologists. Josephus says they burned the whole thing to the ground. But the archaeologists say, no, they burned a third to the ground. And whenever there's a debate between archaeology and literature, you should always go with archaeology, because it's something you can look at and see, right? So they burned about a third of it to the ground, and then they turned it, they sold everybody left in the city, they sold them off as slaves, and they turned it into a colonia. They called it a colony. And there they would have invited, they did. They invited people that they owed money to, like retired generals, retired soldiers, civil servants, people that the Roman government owed money to. They would give them a free house in Sepphoris. And that's how the colonia system worked. So in the Sepphoris, before this was basically a Jewish city, Jewish town. About 10,000 people lived there. So it was a town of about 10,000 people, mostly Jews. And then it switched over to pretty much everybody was supportive of the Roman Empire, because they were all basically Roman people, right, living in that town. So our man Judas, he needs an alias. He can't call himself Judas anymore, it'd be way too risky. So what he does is he picks the name Joseph, because if you look back in the Torah, it says the king of David said the Messiah was supposed to come from the Judah tribe, right? But there was another idea going around at the time called Messiah ben Joseph, that the Messiah, or there could be two Messiahs. One could come from the Judah tribe, and the other one could come from the Joseph tribe. Now, the Joseph tribe was split into two, but it was this idea of Messiah ben Joseph was that you could have two Messiahs, one from the Joseph tribe and one from the Judah tribe. And so what does he call himself? He calls himself Joseph, because he thought of himself as a Messiah. So his name, now we're in Nazareth. He moves to Nazareth. So his name, Nazareth. In Nazareth, he picks the name Joseph, and he marries Mary. Okay, so this is this story. And so what does he name his kids after? Names he could not say anymore, right? He couldn't say his name, his old name Judas. That would be too risky. So what does he do? He names his first son Jesus. Next son, he names Judas. Just like, you know what? You're not going to put me down. You're not going to hold your thumb over me, world. I'm naming my son Judas. The name that would put him at risk if he ever said, yeah, I'm Judas, son of Hezekiah. He would be arrested immediately, burned at the stake, because they were looking for him. So what does he do? He names his son Judas, his next son Judas. And then the next son after that, he names James. Then he makes the following son, he names after himself Joseph. And then finally Simon. And then finally, after all that, his partner, Matthew, who had been burned at the stake. That was another son of his. So what he's doing, he's repeating all those names of people that could never be spoken against safely. He named all his sons after those names. So that is the basic review of what you missed if you weren't here for the first 6 lectures. Now, when I tell people this kind of stuff, they say, where do you get all that stuff? So we spent a couple minutes just going over the evidence for everything I just told you. Okay. So the New Testament says Mary, Joseph. So that information is from the New Testament. Now, everything I say tonight is going to be either from a source. It's all going to be from a source. Some of it's going to be supported by math. We're not going to go over the math because we don't have time. But if you want to see how the math supports these things, you can watch the earlier YouTube videos. So it's all from the sources. And I don't believe all of it is true. There's one thing I don't believe is true. But at this point, I'm just at the point of I'm trying to give out to you what the sources say. Later on, we'll go into what things I don't think are true and which things. I think it's just 1 or 2 items I think are not true. So we have, according to the New Testament says Mary married Joseph, and they had the following kids. I'm not going to write them all out because it takes too long. I'll just write out Jesus, and then there's Judas, James, Simon. This isn't the order the New Testament gives it to you, but I'm writing it down in this other order. And then Joseph. And Dr. James Tabor, about the only scholar with a PhD that agrees with this kind of stuff I'm telling you, is he agrees with the following point. As a matter of fact, he's the one who came up with the idea. He thinks that Judas, James, and Simon, these 3 guys, brothers of Jesus, are the same guys as Judas, James, and Simon that are found in, that are the disciples. He thinks these 3 disciples are these 3 guys. And I use math to support his argument. And we learn, this is very interesting because this guy, James, is called the son of Alphaeus. So as it turns out, that Alphaeus was another name that Judas, son of Hezekiah, the thing we erased, it was one of his aliases. So it turns out that Joseph equals Alphaeus. It's another name. And I think this is in video 1, if you want to see the support for that. So let me see, there's that. And then the New Testament says that Alphaeus, with Joseph, had a son named Matthew, the tax collector. So if you were to find a theoretical tomb of all these people, you would have, all these people would be in one tomb. If you found that tomb, you'd expect to find these names in that tomb. Well, they found a tomb with these names in it. It's called the Talpiot tomb. It has Mary, Joseph, Jesus, and Joseph, and our guy Matthew. Has those 5 names. When you do the math on it, the odds that these are the same tomb, it's about like 98%. What you do is you pull information out of Tal Elan's lexicon, and that gives you name frequency data. The name frequency data applied to this question of these 5 names. What's the odds of these 5 names matching the names of this other group? It's about 98% chance that they were talking about the same people. So anyway, they are the same. And then, let's see. So the question is, where did this name, oh yeah, so in the tomb, there was a bone box. See, all these people were placed, let's talk about the burial system, called Kokim burial system. You would die, this is described in the New Testament. Just read about how Jesus was prepared. His body was prepared after he died. When you die, they would clean your body, put spices on you and stuff like that, wrap you in a cloth, and place you on a shelf inside a rock-cut tomb or inside a cave that had been turned into a tomb. So they would put you on the shelf, and then you would sit there for like a year, and then they have a special ceremony called the Gathering of the Bones. They bring in a bone box, and they put the cloth, the shroud that was wrapped around you, inside the tomb. Sometimes they put the cloth in the bone box, sometimes they wouldn't. And anyway, sometimes they put that in, but they could gather all the bones and put them in the bone box. And your name, sometimes, about 20% of the time, names would be etched with hammer and chisel, etched into the side of that bone box. So you could tell who's in there. So that's how they did it. And the question is there was a bone box in there that said Judas, son of Jesus. So that tells us a lot of information. One, Jesus had to get married. Two, he had a son. Three, the name Judas is important to him. So why would the name Judas be important to him? As it turns out, Jesus had a brother, this guy Judas. This is Judas Thomas. Thomas means twin, so he had a brother who was his actual twin. So he names his son, Judas, after his twin, Judas, which you would think that's what people would do, right? So anyway, he did that, and all the arguments for why, this is the one argument that I can't support with math, that this guy, Thomas, was actually the twin of Jesus. That is supported by about 11 arguments, which you can see in the YouTube video, but everything else is pretty much done by math. So that's the basic thing about the background that I've talked about. And let me see, that gets us, the only part that's missing is this whole thing about Judas, the Hezekiah story. And when you look at you look at Hezekiah and Judas, son of Hezekiah, you compare the two families, that family and the Jesus family, you find that they have to be connected. They lived in the same neighborhood, right? Sepphoris and Nazareth, 4 miles apart. They had the same beliefs. Both families thought they had the Messiah in their group. So and a bunch of other things, the odds that they are the actual same family is like 99.9 something percent. So it's like they are the same family. And the only thing is, what is the connection? And the connection that makes the most sense is that this guy, Joseph, is actually Judas, son of Hezekiah, because Judas, son of Hezekiah, believed he was the Messiah, or believed that he was a king, right? And so you can only be king if you're a son of David, and Jesus himself called him, or people called him son of David, the king, the Messiah. So you have, because of the messianic line, it goes through the bloodline, father to son, the son to son to son. That would make sense that this guy is an alias for the Judas, son of Hezekiah, and that he is Jesus' father. He had another son named Menahem, who also, Judas, son of Hezekiah, also had another son, Menahem, who also made messianic claims. He, just like Jesus had that triumphal march procession into Jerusalem, everybody was saying, hey, Jesus is here, and, celebrating and that kind of thing. Menahem did the same thing. When it had a processional march, triumphant processional march into Jerusalem, put on the purple robes, then he got assassinated. But anyway, he had the same kind of mentality. So that's the review. Now we'll talk a little bit about the archaeology of Nazareth. So some mythicists think that Nazareth didn't even exist. And they actually have some good arguments, because if you try to look up Nazareth in the Old Testament, in the Talmud, in Josephus, Josephus was a general marching around Galilee, he never mentions Nazareth. So you're like, well, if it exists, wouldn't somebody write about it somewhere? There's no record of it during that time. But the archaeologists have records of it. And let's go way, way back. In 1934, R. Newville found in a cave a mile and a half southeast of Nazareth a skull that was older than the Neanderthals. So that really goes back. And then in 1963, there were burial caves in the upper city of Nazareth that were found, and they are from the Middle Bronze Age. So that's the earliest record we have of anybody living in the Nazareth area is from the Middle Bronze Age. And then we have in later on, there was found the earliest pottery. This is in between the years 1892 and 1955. The earliest pottery we have found in Nazareth was from the actual Iron Age, 900 to 600 BC. Later on, they found kokum-type tombs, which I described earlier, were found, which they only started using them in the year 200 BC up to 70 AD. So right when time Jesus was alive, that was the only time really that they used those types of tombs, and they were found in Nazareth also. Then in those same years, they found 4 of the tombs had rolling stones, like Rolling Stones. It's not like a band, I know. They had rolling stones. Like, remember in the New Testament when Jesus was buried in a tomb, they rolled the stone and they blocked the door, and Mary Magdalene, or Mary the mother of Jesus, they were planning to go there, but they said, who's going to roll away the stone? It's too heavy for us. Well, anyway, in Jerusalem, they had a style to have rolling stones in front of these kokim tombs. Well, they actually had that same style in Nazareth. So, and that thing was not used after 70 AD, after Jerusalem was destroyed. They didn't really have this rolling stone type of barrels anymore. So that kind of gives us a time frame of evidence, a group of evidence that says why we think Nazareth existed. Let's see. And then in 1962, there was a fragment of that had the actual name Nazareth on it. It was found in 1962, but it wasn't probably made until about the year 300. But anyways, it was in 1962. The fragment made a reference to Nazareth being one of the 24 places where that the Jewish leaders went to after the destruction of Israel, of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was destroyed, was attacked, and destroyed or partly destroyed in the year 70, and then the Romans finished it off in the year about 135, roughly. And around then was the second revolt, and after that, the Jewish leaders had to leave, and they went to Galilee, and one of the families went to Nazareth. So all of this evidence that I just mentioned comes from, let's see, Benedict Valminic, 1892. He was writing then. And then in 1889, it was Prosper Viavd. And then 1955 was Bagatti. So those are the archaeologists that wrote about this material back then. And Bagatti later on in 1969 and Fag in 2000 found lamps and other pottery finds that they said came from the Hellenistic and early Roman period, which is basically when Jesus was there. And then 1992, we had a person named Zvi Gao, and she, I don't know what he or she, I don't know the gender, wrote this book called Lower Galilee in the Iron Age, and said that there are plenty of springs in Nazareth at that time. So if there's water and there's farmland, you expect there to be people there. Okay. So then in 2007, the specialists, the scholars, Fawn, Voss, and Rapuno wrote the paper called Surveys and Excavations at the Nazareth Village Farm, 1997 to 2002. And their final report was written in 2007. And there they said that the earliest occupation of Nazareth was in the late Hellenistic of the 1st and 2nd century BC. They found jar and jug shards. And then first century to the first century BC to the first century AD they found a storage jar in 3 different places. They found one place storage jar, second place storage jar, and the third place with the base of a jug. And so those periods, more evidence that Nazareth had a population during the time that Jesus was there. 165 coins were found. And coins are the best, right? Because they have dates on them. And so, but of the 165 coins, most of them were not of this time period, but there were a few. And there were a few of the Hellenistic, Hasmonean, and early Roman time periods when Jesus was there. So So that's all this good evidence that says that Nazareth actually did exist. So the question is, why would the literature not have the name Nazareth, but the archaeology has it? And I believe what the answer is when Sepphoris was destroyed in the year 4 BC, before the year 4 BCE, I believe there was no Nazareth. The name Nazareth did not exist. They probably had a different name. In the year 4 BCE, Sepphoris was destroyed, and they needed lots and lots of stone to rebuild it. With a town of 10,000 people, you got to expect maybe 700 houses were destroyed because 1/3 of the city was destroyed. So to rebuild 700 houses, you're going to need a lot of stone. And what did they have at Nazareth, just 4 miles away? There's like stone right on the ground. You don't even have to dig. I was like, you could dig down and find more, but you could just find it right on the ground. They have a picture of a stone that somebody sat on top of, maybe while they're having a picnic, and they had a hammer and chisel, and they notched out a whole nice block. It was like 2 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot block. It's just like, you can see it. So anyway, Nazareth was great for getting material, and Sepphoris had just been destroyed, and the Romans wanted to send their people there. They wanted to rebuild those houses so their people they owed favors to could live there. So there would have been a boom, a population boom in Nazareth to make stone for Sepphoris. Now, and what is Joseph? What's his job? Now, everybody would probably say carpenter. Well, actually, the word is builder or craftsman. And builders back then were not carpenters because there was hardly any wood around there. Builders were stonemasons. So now he could have been a craftsman or he could have been a stonemason. But since we know for sure that there would have been a high demand to fix Sepphoris, and there would have been a high demand for stone right around the year 4 BCE, right when Mary was supposed to be getting pregnant with Jesus. Right or that year, there was this high demand for stone. And Joseph is called either a stonemason or he's called a craftsman. You've got to probably figure he was a stonemason. That's where all the money was, where all the work was. So he was there. And just to give you a little bit more of the archaeology of the place, in 2009, the archaeologist Yardina Alexandre, she was the excavations director of the Israel Antiquities Authority. And she said they finally found the first house in Nazareth. Like all these years, they found other things, but they finally found the first house in Nazareth that was there when Jesus was there. It's like, man. And so that was pretty exciting. And along with they earlier found the tombs, right? And so putting the evidence together of at least one house and all these tombs that were around, they've estimated that there were 50 houses there, and about 100 to 500 people lived there. Another interesting thing about the archaeology of that first house, they had a camouflage section to hide from the Romans. It would have held about 6 people for a few hours. Sometimes they would have these rooms, like when in America they would have like root cellars. And so it was like a root cellar, right? You would have, in some of the houses, you could have like on your floor of your house, you dig through your floor, have another room below your floor, and then just cover it with wood and then maybe some dirt or whatever, and hide it. And then that way you could hide in there if the Romans came. So that's what they found was a space to hide 6 people, and all of these, and that there would have been about 50 homes based on how many tombs they found. And so I'll just say one more thing about the Sepphoris and the Nazareth area. As soon as I find my sign, there it is. Okay. Can everybody see this? Can you see it okay? All right, good. All right. Now, Sepphoris has a cool name. It means Sippori. It's named after a little bird that perched, right? And so they named the town because the town's on top of a hill. So they named the town after the bird. That's kind of cool. Anyway, so there's Sepphoris, and then here Nazareth, the next hill over now the question is, was Nazareth on the hillside or in the valley? So there's some debate about that. So that's why I didn't put it on the hillside. But if you're in Nazareth, it wouldn't take you much to get on top of the hill. You could look right across and see Sepphoris. Now, these little dots, I don't know if you see them, but these little dots, that's like finds that people do. Like archaeologists will walk through the fields after farmers done plowing and pick up stuff. And what they found was, in Sepphoris, they'd find glass and different kinds of pots and things like this. And the things they found were not ritually pure. Like Jews would not use that material, okay? But over here, all of this stuff they find over here, it's all ritually pure stuff, right? Like you could use, if you're a Jew back then, you could use a stone bowl or a stone pot or a stone jug, because stone would not hold impurity. So we're not talking about science here, we're talking about religion, right? So God made all these rules about what they could use, and God said they had to use like stone or clay pots that were like prepared well, God didn't say this literally, but they had all these rules about what pots that they could use, and Sepphoris did not have those, or had very little of those, and Nazareth had like exclusively that stuff. Matter of fact, any clay that you find over there all came from one village. It was a village about 23 miles away to the southeast, I believe. And so they bought all the clay from one other it was a Jewish village, and they bought all the clay pots from that one village. So what's going on here? In Nazareth, we're noticing that the archaeology is telling us that this was a strictly Jewish community. These were Jews that were following the law strictly, and over here in Sepphoris, they were not, right? So, just to re-say it, you had the tombs in Nazareth, which were not only were they the kind that the Jews used throughout the country at that time, they were the kind that the Jews from Jerusalem used. They were like with the rolling stones, right? You had the clay was the right kind of clay. They didn't use or they used stone bowls, which were also fine to use, and Sepphoris would use other types of things which weren't acceptable. Also, human excrement. Like the people of Sepphoris, they felt you could use human excrement for fertilizer on the fields, and the people in this group of people were like the Essenes. Remember we brought up the name Essenes before? Well, here's another hint that these people are connected to the Essenes. They would not use human excrement. The Essenes did not believe in that. There might have been other groups that did not believe in it. And so it's possible that these people are actually an offshoot of the Essenes. So what you have going here is a group of people that all believe the same stuff. And they're all connected probably somehow to the rebuilding of Sepphoris. It's a boom town. There's if you show up, you're going to get a job building stone, like building buildings like Joseph, or chopping stone out of the rock formations that are on the ground to sell stones to the builders that Joseph would use to build the building, or that kind of thing. So it was a booming economy, and it happened right after the destruction of Sepphoris, right when Joseph moved in with his wife. And earlier I talked about how the whole naming of Nazareth took place. That it was actually Joseph himself that picked the name Nazorians, from which came the name Nazareth. And the Nazorians had two main beliefs. One, that they should be observers of the law, and the archaeology shows us that they were observers of the law. Two, is that they had the Messiah with them, because the name refers to the branch, or the branch of David, which is the Messiah. And there's no other family found in all our records that had more claims to the messianic claims, claims of royalty, than this family, the Joseph family. Because Joseph, he himself and Jesus and his son Menahem, all three made messianic claims to the kingdom. So they had, he's the one most likely that came up with the word Nazorians to name the people, his group of friends that moved in there. So it was probably like this. He knew Sepphoris was depopulated everybody that knew him, remember, he was a famous rabbi when he was in Jerusalem. So his face, everybody would know him, right? So, but when everybody disappears from the city that he was from, nobody would know him, right? So what he does is he takes his friends, his supporters, which he had many. This guy was a charismatic leader. He constantly would get people to follow him and do stuff and revolt against the Romans. So he took his friends and encouraged them all to move to Nazareth. And there in Nazareth, they had this little community for a few years while Jesus was born and grew up. So Jesus grows up in a place where his dad was like a big shot, where his dad had a job, where everybody was like united in this belief of let's follow the law, even if it costs us everything. And that's what Jesus' first years were like. And so, I think I'll leave it like that. Any questions? Let me get you the mic. Thank you. This one. This is the one we want.
I just have some little questions. You said that the coins had dates on them, and I was just curious as to what are those dates?
So a lot of the coins were the Byzantium ages and the Marmaluke. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Time period, the people of, so some of them were like hundreds of years after Jesus, and then there's some like before Jesus was born. Like Hasmonean would be about 160 BC, so somewhere before, and then somewhere way afterwards. So there's a variety.
But still, if it's before, because we just have BC and AD, so what would they have if it's 120 years before Jesus?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
exactly. It would have a number that was based on a whole different calendar. Yeah, like 416, whatever, after the king of, so they had to like do all that figuring out, yeah.
And how common was the name Jesus back then?
So about 4% of the population had the name Jesus, or Joshua. So Joshua was the old name, and Jesus was like the modern slang name for Jesus, but they both meant the same thing.
And how does John the Baptist fit into any of this?
So the New Testament says John the Baptist was a relative of Jesus, but that's the kind of thing that people that were making up stories would write to make Jesus look, kind of better because, he's related to John the Baptist, So, I don't think the evidence is out there that we can rest that says that he's related. It does look like he was baptized, though, by John the Baptist. Back then, John Baptist was a really big, there's more things written about John the Baptist in Josephus than about Jesus. He was a really big deal. And so, it looks like the Christians took on the story of John the Baptist and added it to the Jesus story. But I personally think that Jesus was actually baptized by. The reason I think he was baptized by him because the whole baptism thing was about repenting. And there's no way a Christian's going to say Jesus needed to repent. So I don't think Christians made up the story about Jesus going to repent and be baptized. So that's why I think he actually was baptized. It's called the criterion of embarrassment. If there's something embarrassing, storytellers usually don't make it up. Anybody else? Brett?
I'm curious. I've been thinking about equality and realizing that it's very important to me. Like, for instance, I wonder if with AI and some potential intelligence modification, if there should be something that basically makes everyone equally intelligent, more or less. And so anyway, I've just been reflecting on this idea, and then I've been wondering, in Jesus, how much of the historical Jesus actually petitioned for equality? Because the impression I get from the New Testament, wrong or right historically, is that he cared for the downtrodden and the outcasts of society, such as the prostitutes and tax collectors. And I wanted to know how much you think that's actually historical of Jesus. I know it's not what you're presenting today, but it was just something that was on my mind and wanted to see what you had to say.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Brett. So what I've done is I spent 33 years on this project studying this stuff. This is all the low-hanging fruit. This is the easy stuff. The hard stuff is to figure out what Jesus actually said. So I think he did say some of the things about take care of the poor and stuff, but I haven't studied that. So you need somebody smarter than me to figure that one out. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I reflect on is just it seems like religions tend to have an equalizing factor. Like the impression I get is that they're part of a push and pull of society where some religious faction is trying to make things more equal, and then there's people in power like the Romans that are trying to make things more like unequal or like. And so I guess I was just also wondering if there's anything in the Bible before Jesus that's kind of equalizing, I guess, like in the Torah or. So I know it's a little bit off topic, but I know you study the Bible a lot, so I was wondering if
There's the prophets of the Hebrew Bible, which the Christians call the Old Testament. The prophets are amazing. The prophets talk about taking care of the poor, feeding taking care of the orphans and that kind of thing. So they're very inspiring, and so I could answer it that way. And anybody else, Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to say and ask. Actually, the Jesus seminar is what covers that. Like, what did Jesus actually say? They a bunch of scholars get together and go percentage-wise.
Yeah.
He said it. He didn't say it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Great. Hank. Oh, go for it, Hank.
This is kind of an engineering question. As a kid, that whole rolling the stone away from the tomb, I would see these holy cards of that, and the stone looks like it weighs several tons. And so, how did they actually roll a stone away from the tomb entrance? Do you know that?
So, well, I know a little bit. Okay, so what they found was, sometimes they won't find the stone, but they find a groove that the stone rolled through. And the grooves that I saw were like not really wide. So they probably had a stone, that they kind of like chopped up and made into like roughly a sphere. And then it would just roll down that groove. So if it's going down a groove that big, it's not going to be weighing tons and tons. But, it sounds kind of legit about the women saying who's going to roll the stone away. So maybe it's like it's heavier than 2 or 3. Like if the stone is small enough, you can't get enough people on it to push, right? So you need like strong people to push. So yeah, as an engineering thing, it feels like what the New Testament says about the stone being too heavy for a couple of women might not be okay for a couple of men pushing on it. So yeah.
Wasn't it you that told me recently that the groove is to keep it there? They push it, or somebody told me this recently. They pushed it into the groove, and so it would. Then they couldn't push it out.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I hope I said that. Okay. Anyone else? Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening and putting up with my whatever creativity I've used up here. And we're going to take we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then after that, we're going to hear about grave rubbings, gravestone rubbings. And after that, we're going to hear Mesoamerican Indigenous revolts. For what years are we talking about, Hank, on that?
1519 to 2025.
1519 till today. And then finally, we're going to end up with expose yourself to smallpox. And that's from a storyteller, Pam Bloom, and she'll be here and talk about that. So we'll right now we'll go 5 minutes, and then we'll be right back. And when you hear, if Brett doesn't mind, when you hear the piano start playing, we'll give you 30 seconds to get back. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks.
If I had a professor like you, I would pay a lot more attention. Oh, kind of doodling. This is great.
Thank you. All right, buddy. How's it going? Good. Hey, do you? I was thinking about thanking you publicly, but some people don't want their name out there.
Oh, I don't care. That's fine. Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll try to put that in there somewhere. Oh, I gotta watch the clock.
put this
I think I'm actually going to use the lectern for now.
Oh, we're welcoming Christine to the pulpit, and she's going to talk about rubbings on gravestones. Thanks very much, Christine.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? Oops. Okay. Put this in here for a minute. Okay. So, have you ever gone for walks in the local cemetery? How's about a historic cemetery? And how do you know it's an historic cemetery? How would you know that? Can anybody guess? Yes, cool dates. Awesome. Have you ever noticed the years on those tombstones when you walked by? And so how does that make you feel? Okay, glad to be alive from Cheryl. Any other? Okay, so I worked at a youth center years ago when I was a young teenager, and also a craft store. The craft store was named Gloria's. Gloria and I had been talking maybe about something or not, and one day she contacted me and she goes, Christine, you gotta come down. You're gonna take your kids to a historic cemetery. I got a present for you. So I went to the craft store and she goes, it's over there in the corner. Now, the craft store is literally about the size of our dining area, maybe a little bit larger. And I was able to get rice paper. She goes, take it all, go have fun. So we got rice paper and special wax crayons, which were almost the size of the palm of my hand at the time. And they were shaped like a pyramid, but the top was cut off. And they were in this really kind of basically brown region colors. Anyway, one second. I have everything written. So, oops, sorry. So the question is, where does rice paper come from, right? So I did a little research, very easy to do. And it turns out that rice sheets have roots in ancient China. And they were first produced in the Tang Dynasty, which was in Jing County, under the jurisdiction of Xing Hao. In the ancient world, people who traveled miles over land and sea were introduced into this because it was a good trading mechanism for what is called the Silk Road. Anybody ever hear that term? Pretty awesome. Anyway, thousands of people go to Vietnam to do rubbings of their names of their loved ones that are lost, and have been doing that for decades. Really cool. Bibles today are printed in very thin rice paper and or wood pulp glued together, and they last 20 to 50 years. So we had a fantastic afternoon, myself, and I think it was 3 or 4 kids. In my Volkswagen, we drove to a historic cemetery in one of our towns. and we cruised the cemetery looking for exciting things to do rubbings on. Now, I still have those rubbings, and the rubbings that I have were dated back to the 1700s. They're really awesome, and someday you'll get to see them. They range in size from about the size of this left turn to almost 5 feet long. They have amazing sayings on them. One of them actually has a saying which Disney has been using for decades: prepare for death and follow me. That is actually on a 17th century tombstone, which I have a rubbing for. They are embellished with angels and skulls, wings, fauna and flora, the ones that I've seen, just really amazing. And the sculptors at the time were so precise, their penmanship in cutting stone and their calligraphy and all types of, the lettering was so amazing. And it comes out really clear on a rubbing. It's so awesome. Anyway, what else? Okay. So I got that. Some of them have sayings, some of them have songs. And if any of you folks want to go on a tour sometime, maybe in Piedmont, California, apparently they have historic cemeteries. And then there's one that's way out by Mills College. They may have historic cemeteries, and there's also one on Mission Dolores. And I looked it up, it's 16th and 17th century. It would be really fun. It's very easy to do. And although I wasn't able to get rice paper in time because I have a bunch of it in my storage, so why buy more? I did a little sample just of an idea of what I saw back in the 70s at the historical cemetery. And here's basically what it looks like. Really cool stuff. Anyway, oops. Okay. All right. Whoops. So basically, I'm going to show you how it's done, even though you can probably already imagine how it's done. Can you all imagine already how it's done? Pretty easy. Do you want to see? Okay, doke. 1 second. We're going to use the mosaic sculpture from the garden that Jim Beatty ground scored as our tombstone. So maybe you can help me. We're going to flip this up on edge. You're going to flip it up on the edge. So could see it? Yeah. Well, you might have to hold it for me. I don't know. Sure. Okay, so basically he's going to hold it. I'm going to put the paper on it, and then we're going to do some scribbling. I wasn't able to find the chalk, which I stashed. Oh, someone removed it. Anyway. So we're just going to try it with crayons, see what happens. All right. So basically, and then we're just going to pick a color, any color. Okay, pick a color, any color. We're going to do blue. Okay, cool. Okay, well, I'm not ready for that just yet. Let's see if this will work. We don't know. It's better with a wide crayon, or even chalk would be awesome, but you know, the chalk that I stashed disappeared. Anyway, but you can get the idea. And so the more time you spend on each of the tombstones, the more intricate and details you'll be able to take off of the actual sculpting design. I've always wanted to be I am a sculptor. I actually do very good busts, heads and faces. And I've always wanted to actually maybe do this just for the, might be a cool thing to learn how to do. Anyway, I don't know if anything's coming up. I just see lots of scribbles. Anyway, so gravestone rubbing is just a hobby, and but it's actually illegal in a lot of states because they believe that it defaces the tombstones. I think it's illegal. I don't really know. I'm sorry. I used to know. I didn't actually. Yeah, there's many states that it's illegal. So you just have to look up before you're going to go do it to make sure you don't get busted doing it or something. Anyway, okay, so basically this is how it works. And so anybody want to ask me something or have anything to say? Okay.
Have you ever been harassed by a cemetery official for doing this?
Oh, no, I've actually only did it one time, and it was with the kids when I was 16 years old.
Ah, they didn't
historic
catch
ceremony.
you. Okay.
No, it was a broad daylight. It was beautiful, and no. So, but I think about it often.
Oh, real quick. So when?
When?
When are we going to see them?
Oh, when are we going to go? Or when are you going to see them? Sometime. I'm just going to put it sometime. I know where they are buried. They're not buried in dirt, but they are buried. Yes, Brett.
I was curious. I read recently when I asked Meta AI about methods to become more ethical that it says perspective taking helps people become more ethical when they take on the perspective of other people that are different from them. And I thought about that during your speech. I was curious if there's any way that grave sites or rubbing of grave sites could maybe help someone take on a different perspective, such as looking at the life of someone that is different from them. Any ideas come to mind?
Well, I think that it could inspire them to do research on the person whose tombstone that they're looking at. And, you know, everybody has their own aha moments and what turns them on. So we're just going to go with a big yes on that. Okay. Okay. All right.
All right.
Question was, I think, how much does it cost to be buried in a graveyard? Was that the question? Yeah, I've seen that too. That's very interesting. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, let's thank Christine very much for her presentation. Thank you, Christine. And we'll take 5 minutes, and then after that, we will hear from Hank Pellissier about Mesoamerican Indigenous revolts from 1519 till today. Thanks very much, everybody. 5 minutes. Thanks.
Not really. Okay. We have prize money today, as promised. 20,000 shillings. It's in Uganda money, though. So I'm not going to tell you how much it's worth, but it is worth something. It's worth something. But you won't be able to actually cash it unless you go to Uganda, and that'll cost like $2,000 to get there. So we have a game show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. We're going to keep track of who gets the answers right. And the person who gets the most answers right gets the 20,000 shillings. Okay. The topic is Mexican indigenous resistance from 1519 to 2025. All of these questions should be things, hopefully, that you think you should know, but you actually don't. Things that you might feel even slightly guilty that you don't know. Okay, so the question is, it starts at 1519 is the beginning date. Why did I pick 1519 as the beginning date of this discussion? What happened in 1519? 1519, nobody? 1519, what happened in Mexico? Cortez, you get a point over there. Okay, Cortez. And who was the battle against? Montezuma, a point over there. Montezuma and Cortez. Okay, and Montezuma, he was the leader of what tribe? Aztecs. Okay, I think you've kind of pulled ahead. It's kind of a tie over here. Okay, name the main, this is an impossible question. I'm going to throw these in. Name the main Native American tribe that allied itself with the Spaniards. Silence settles over the room. It's called the Tlaxcaltans. Okay, I got it, but I couldn't say it right. Okay, here's a sad question. What was the population of Mexico before the Spanish arrived? You can throw out any numbers you want. The closest number wins. 20 million. Any other guesses? 20 million. You all get a free guess. Go ahead. 10 million. 20 million. 10 million. Come on. You all get a guess. What? 2 million. Anyone else? What? 21. Do I hear 22? What? No. The answer is an astonishing 25 million. You got it. 25 million indigenous people lived in Mexico before the Spanish arrived. It was a very dense population. Okay, how many different indigenous groups were there? 43. What else do I hear? 200. 43 and 200. Any other guesses? 17. The answer is 62. I think Jeff got that. That's the closest one. Okay, what percentage of indigenous people died in Mexico within 100 years after the Spanish conquest? 90%. 90%. Any other guesses? What percentage of the indigenous people died after the Spanish arrived? All of them, 100%. She said 90. What else? 80. 93. The answer is between 90 and 95. So I think you two kind of won that one. Okay, what did they die of? I mean, they died of a lot of different things, but what was one of the main things they died of? What? Smallpox. Smallpox is right. 2 points quickly for her. Okay, here's an impossible question. What are the Aztecs called today? What's the name of their tribe today? No, Nahua. Yes. What percentage of Mexico still identifies as indigenous? Throw out some numbers. About 40, 80, 60. I was surprised, but the answer is 19.4%. Not as many as, maybe it's because they identify, maybe they don't want to identify. Okay, the indigenous people were forced into mining, primarily looking for what mineral? Silver is the answer. Silver mining. Okay, we're going to go south a little bit. What's the main group of indigenous people in Central America? Inca is one guess. We're talking about Central America, Guatemala. Maya is the answer. I hear two simultaneous Mayas. You guys have to keep track of your own answers, so I'm going to have to tear this into little pieces and hand it out. What Central American nation has the highest percentage of indigenous people? Guatemala, you all win. And what is that percentage? 43, Jeff. 43. Okay, this is a little bit harder. What indigenous group in Mexico fought for 400 years, often with success, fought for 400 years against the government? It's a tough question. You don't know it, but I'm going to give you a hint. What American writer wrote about this group in the 70s and 80s? In the 1970s and 80s, weren't you all reading about these? Yes. What? Well, first let's name the author. Who wrote all those groovy books in the 70s and 80s? Carlos Castaneda. And what tribe was he talking about? The blank blank way of knowledge. The Yaqui way of knowledge. That's the tribe that fought against the Mexicans government for 400 years. Okay, we're going to flash forward in time to the Mexican Revolution. What Mexican revolutionary leader was part indigenous? That's not what I have down here. No. Name another Mexican revolutionary leader. You named Pancho Villa. You named Benito Juarez. What?
Yaqui?
No. Emiliano Zapata. For some reason, they never have taquerias named after him, but he is still a very important revolutionary leader. And what indigenous group was his family from? This is too hard. He's a Nahua. What state was Zapata from? Nobody knows. No, Morelos. What was his primary goal? Primary goal of Emiliano Zapata? It's hard to argue with that. Gonna give you half a point. Okay, land reform. How did Emiliano Zapata die? He was assassinated at what age? 25? No, give him a break. 39. 39, he died. Okay. Can you name any primary slogans of Emiliano Zapata? No. Slogans, I'm going to name them. Land and liberty. It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees. The land belongs to those who work it. Okay, today, now we're moving up to 1990s. There's an indigenous rebellion in a Mexican state that has been ongoing for more than 30 years. What's the name of that state? No. Well, that is actually true, but that's not what I'm thinking of. What? No. Chiapas. And what's the name of these revolutionaries? Zapatistas. And what's the name of their spokesman who insists that he is not their leader, but he is their leader? What's the name of their spokesman? Subcomandante Marcos. Okay, and I think we're almost done. I've got some drug questions. The Huichol people, as a tribe, they're involved in land disputes. What are they famous for? What? No, the Huichol people. Are they famous for? All I know about them is peyote. So they're famous for peyote. Okay, Chiapas State is 24% indigenous. What state has an even higher percentage of indigenous people? Yes, that's right. You've been saying Oaxaca, 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 Oaxaca over and over, and you finally got it right. Name the president of Mexico who was indigenous. The only president of Mexico who was indigenous. No, I'll give you a hint. He's from Oaxaca. You've said his name before, Benito Juarez. He was a Zapotec from Oaxaca, and we're done. Thank you. I don't know who won. I think you all won. A big hand for everybody. Okay.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Hank. That was great. So we'll do a 5-minute break, and then we're going to hear about how to be, or something about expose yourself to smallpox. So thanks very much for coming. I want to thank Brett Torres, who was on the piano tonight. That was a lot of fun. And Paul Nordine on the sound. Thanks so much, Paul. You made it all happen. And for all you guys that came, and we have one more speech, which will start in 5 minutes. Thanks.
One minute.
That sounds, hey, is that picking up? Are you going to stand or sit? Well, I'm going to sit. Hello. Oh. Yeah, that works. Is the light okay? Is everything okay? Pardon? Okay, so Jeff wants me to say the title. I guess everybody here is to be exposed to smallpox. You got your wish. What's interesting, I was just telling Margaret that everybody who's been up here, there's something that refers to something I have to say tonight. And maybe it's a little bit obtuse, but it's the way my brain works. And as I come along to it, I'll point it out. So everybody's been up here. There's something in here. This evening, I would like to take you on a little expedition, a little tour of smallpox, its history, its nature. It's also known as variola, which comes from the Latin varius, meaning spotted or speckled, and maybe also the Latin word varius, what did I say, varus, which means pimple. So we get a nice visual off of just variola, speckled, spotted pimples. But like any good villain, smallpox has some aliases, just like Judas. There's my first reference, aliases. So smallpox is also known as the world's most treacherous killer, aka speckled monster, aka red plague, and it gets the name that we know it by smallpox. It was given in the 16th century to distinguish it from the great pox being syphilis, which is a bacteria. This prolific killer is now sitting in a padlock room in Atlanta at the United States Center Disease Disease Control and Prevention. They have armed security there, cameras, alarms, in case it tries to make a break for it. And also there's a similar situation in Siberia that is supposedly secure. We'll hear more about that later. Now, if we go back into the origin of virus, how they developed, of course we don't know. I mean, we're going back into the soup, the chemical soup at the beginning of time, physical time on this planet. Some think that the virus created itself before cellular life. Others think that because a virus is not a complete cell, it's only a part of a cell, that it somehow, just got away from a complete cell, a cell exploded, and then it wrapped itself in a protein and started replicating. The interesting thing that I found is that if you ask if a virus is biotic, cellular, life, alive, or abiotic, non-living, air, water, so on, and your answer with only those two categories is it's non-living. Now this drove me crazy because I thought that can't be. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. So I kept looking. Okay, okay. No? There? Okay. So every time I tried to find some other answer other than abiotic or biotic, which never came up biotic, I finally found an answer that I could accept. And that answer was described as it being a borderline entity. So it's considered an unusual entity, the definition, an unusual entity considered to be existing. I don't know. Who writes this stuff? So it lives in this gray area, this borderline area. And it has DNA and RNA, and it's surrounded by a protein. And the reason it's considered non-living is that it is not a complete cell, first of all, and it cannot perform basic life functions. It doesn't have a metabolism, it doesn't grow. It cannot reproduce without a host cell, and it's not dead because it has the genetic material and does adapt and evolve. And it's parasitic. Of course, it's considered to have started in Northeast Africa. Generally, groups were following, animals, their food source. And as they settled down, of course, and started doing agricultural farming, getting closer together, gathering animals, and the virus decided to make a nice hop from rodents into humans. Now, rodents always get a bad rap. I don't know. I don't think people approve of their lifestyle, and they get blamed for a lot. I personally love a nice rat. Can't get used to the mic, I'm sorry. So anyway, then that would be 12,000 years ago. Now we don't have any hardcore proof, but we do have hardcore proof 3,000 years before the Common Era, when they unearthed Ramses V's tomb, they did find pockmarked scars on the mummy. So they knew that he died or had it. He maybe didn't die of it, but they had it. So it was definitely in Egypt at that time. And it started moving around, of course, from trade and travel. And next time we kind of meet it historically is some medical writings. One from China, and I love the name of it. It was titled Pox Rash Teachings. So it was a lot to learn from the pox. And then the other one was a writing that was done in India, and those were about 6th, 7th century. And then the Silk Road, of course. The rice paper, of course. Those things traveled as well as precious metals, goods, ideas, philosophies. And of course, it was a perfect way for a virus to hitchhike a little ride and get around. The Silk Road started the 2nd century by the Han Dynasty in China and eventually grew into about 4,000 miles of a network of roads. And, smallpox wasn't the only hitchhiker. Certainly, there were others, measles and flus and colds and the usual suspects. It finally started visiting India quite frequently, and it spread to Asia. And in the 700s, it got to Japan, and it really devastated the Japanese. It took 1/3 of their population over a period of about 2 years. And this was in 1735, 1737. And they were Shinto. Buddhism was there too, it had moved up, but Shinto was still the main religion, belief system. And they believed that this must have come from demons. Who else would come and do this to them? But it was avenging demons. And how else do you combat avenging demons? Well, you wear red and have lots of dogs. And that's what they believed would help save them or protect them from the demons, but it didn't. And so they also developed some songs, flattering songs, hoping that they could charm the demons into not bothering them. They were lovely, go away, we're nice. No, it didn't work. They made music and they made dances. Nothing worked. But just like the music, the songs, art is born out of dire circumstances at times. And there was a haiku that was written by Kobayashi Isa, and it's just beautiful. And he wrote it after his daughter, who was about 1 or 2 years old, died from smallpox. This world of dewdrops is only a world of dew. And yet, and I love the way haiku says so much with so little. And it doesn't hammer its meaning into you. You know, it just kind of opens you as to what could this mean. And of course, dewdrops are delicate and fragile and transitory. And yet the last line, this world of dewdrops is only a world of dew, and yet. So that opens you up to whatever possibilities, wherever your heart takes you with that, you know. And yet, the world is incredible, no matter how fragile. Also in Japan, the ruling powers changed. The existing powers that be died. Others took over. There was famine because the farmers were dying, and there was nobody to bring in crops, plant crops. There was migration. People had to move to try and survive. There were tax waivers, and nobles did something they had never done before. They gave away land to people who promised that they would farm it, trying to get the economy going, the food going. And it's interesting that the emperor that came in then, he felt responsible for the smallpox attack. And this was because more, I think, of the Shinto thing, that he had not lived a good life, a good, pure life, and that it was his responsibility to have done that, to protect his people. And so his way in his mind of balancing this out was to go Buddhist big time. And he started throwing money, what money there was, at building temples, shrines, statues, Buddhist, and it nearly bankrupted the Japanese government. Now the Chinese, okay, that was the 700s, so now we're moving up to early 1500s. And that was the first known inoculation that's mentioned that we have history-wise, and he took some pus from a person who was infected and put it, rubbed it into a cut from a healthy person, and that was the first type of inoculation they had. But the Chinese did something else. They would take the scabs that fell off of those afflicted and dry them out and grind them up and to fine powder and then snort them. And it worked. It worked very well. In fact, the mortality rate had been 20 to 30%, went down to 0.5% to 2%. So if Smallpox comes our way for some reason. Gather some scabs, grind them up, and snort away. Good for you. Mortality rate was always about 30%. And of course, we know as Europe started exploration and colonization, by 1600s, smallpox was the leading killer. And as we learned about all of the Americas, from North America all the way down to South America, as was stated, even, you hear that number, and of course, the indigenous people were up against not only, the diseases brought in, but of course the weapons, and there were other diseases, but they say smallpox was the one that did the 90 to 95% of the killing. And it hit Australian Aborigines also. Moving up to, this is a little aside, 1721 in Americas, a Reverend Mather learned of a crude inoculation from a slave, and he inserted pus into a cut, same as the China, they had done in China. So that had traveled somehow, and that proved to be first crude kind of inoculation. And then the American Revolution, George Washington had had smallpox when he was about 19 or 20. And when he was given the task of leading the Continental Army in 1775, he insisted that his army be inoculated against the smallpox. Because certainly, if smallpox were to ravage his army, there would be no revolution. Then finally, in 1796, there was an English doctor, Dr. Edward Jenner, and he observed that milkmaids never caught smallpox. And he kind of put it together that they were exposed to a type of pox. There are tons of poxes. There's, as you know, the monkeypox, cowpox, there's buffalo pox, there's raccoon pox, there's rat pox, there's mouse pox, chicken pox. Doesn't come from chickens, though. Anyway, he figured that gave them some kind of immunity. Being exposed just a little bit to a weaker form of a pox kind of boosted the immune system so that the immune system could deal with something stronger. It knew how to fight it. And so he decided to test his theory on an 8-year-old boy. I was horrified when I read that. So he takes this little 8-year-old boy and he, exposes him to cowpox, and he waits for that to, cook and get all ripe in there and give the kid a chance to build immunity. And then he injected him with some smallpox pus, and the child did not get the smallpox. And so that furthered that whole thing. Now I'm going to go into the replication of smallpox. It usually enters through the respiratory system, and it uses a cell to survive. It attaches to the host cell and infuses the cell with its own DNA or RNA. Then it uses the cell's energy, because it has none of its own, to create new viral parts, which eventually cause the host cell to pop and release all those other viruses that were created inside. You now have lots of new viruses ready to latch onto another cell and repeat and repeat and repeat. The response. Here's the virtual reality part of our show. No AI needed. no technology. We're going to go old school. We're going to use our imaginations. Remember that? First of all, we'll talk about the pustules. Get ready. Close your eyes if you wish. The immune system's response sends white blood cells to the skin, which also leads to a buildup of dead blood cells and body fluids, and to encapsulate and expel the invader. So the body's trying to flood it and push it out. The pustule is, getting it to the surface, and then, of course, the pustule, it keeps pumping it with fluids, and it's supposed to pop and release, and it does. And, of course, more virus is out in the atmosphere. The immune system. So after you have been, what do I want to say, after you've been exposed to smallpox and it's in your body, you don't know it, of course, for, maybe a week or so. And then you start with a high fever, vomiting, severe stomach pains, delirium, and then a red rash. Pustules are on hold, they're coming up. They come in about 6 days, and they first come into your extremities, your arms and your legs. And then as they move into other parts of your body, they move to the inside of your mouth and into your throat, and of course the other parts of the body. And also, smallpox develops the pustules on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. So, and this isn't kind of the itchy kind of chicken poxy thing where you might itch. No, it's painful. And so to move or to touch anything is painful. To walk, no walking. And if you don't have someone to care for you and kind of force fluids or food down you because it's extremely painful to swallow a drink of water or any food, you could very well die of dehydration or starvation before you die of organ failure. And the virus wins. The lifespan of the virus it's surprising. The lifespan, they have kept it on purpose in scientists, kept it alive for 13 years. That's in its special environment. Out in the general population, it wouldn't happen like that. It doesn't live long on hard surfaces. It doesn't like damp weather. It likes dry, dark atmosphere. And of course, it does live in the scabs for 3 to 4 months, as we know, because of the infected blankets that were handed out to indigenous tribes. Now then, something positive about smallpox. The live virus that is in the vaccine actually strengthens the body's cancer-destroying immune cells for certain cancerous tumors that are really difficult to treat. And there are other poxes that aren't as deadly as smallpox, but still, those viruses also destroy cancer cells. So there is a positive side to keeping smallpox around, some say. WHO is really against that. WHO, the World Health Organization, thinks that it should all be stamped out. They tried so hard to get that done. But now, apparently, scientists can create smallpox in the laboratory. or a smallpox-like virus. So they haven't handed out the recipe, and hopefully they won't. And then there was an episode back to the Siberian vault where they keep their smallpox. In 1992, a senior Russian official defected to the United States, and he told the CIA that the Russians had, in fact, developed the virus into a weapon, and they had stockpiled it. So again, remember that little save your scabs and snort thing. Oh, and in Australia also, they have a small amount available. So who knows who else has something. I have then a story about, I don't know if this is true, but I really like it. And I think I heard it from Baba Ram Dass when I went to see him lecture in the mid-'80s, and it was he was talking about how they had found the last outpost of smallpox in a small area in the jungles in India, and they were going to go in there and vaccinate the tribe. Now, they knew this was going to be a problem, that there was going to be a fight, because their belief system was that the smallpox was from the gods, and this would be going against the gods' wishes. I mean, if you survived smallpox, that means you had a blessing, and you had the scars to prove it. And so this was going to wipe out hundreds of years of a belief, and it was tied into religion and their culture. And so anyway, they had made plans, though. They scouted out, and they were going to go in at night when everybody was asleep, and they were going to drag the leader out and, fight him down and force him in inoculation. And that's what they did. And the leader was fighting tooth and toenail, and they were holding him down. And they finally got him inoculated, and all the villagers had come out, and they watched. They didn't help the leader. No, this was up to him. Whatever the outcome, that was going to be it. And so, of course, they did give him the vaccination, and he stood up, and he told all the villagers to get in line and get their vaccinations. And I love that, because the kind of the takeaway, the moral of the story, if you say, or the lesson, is hold on tightly, let go lightly. Hold on to your beliefs, fight for them all you can, and if it's not working out, give it up. Diseases bring pain, death to our lives, and when it finally leaves, it demands a change of some sort in us as individuals, families, societies, politics, religion, economics, warfare, artists. And so it is, and it always will be. So just remember, you know what to do if you haven't been vaccinated. You learned it here. Thank you.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, just a second. Maybe if you go back to using this one, then she'll have
I know it was implied that there aren't any active cases anywhere in the world right now that you know of, right?
Oh, no, I don't know of any, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were.
Okay.
Anyone else? Oh.
It seems sometimes there's good engineering ideas that result from imitating nature, such as an evolutionary algorithm, which is imitating the variation of mutation and selection of animals in general, and then kind of using a similar process to come up with novel solutions. So I was wondering, because there's this idea that sometimes ideas are like genes, that's where the term meme comes from Richard Dawkins. If there's something that we can learn from smallpox replicating strategy that would be used for a good purpose, such as like there's a song and then you want to insert some part of the song that is parasitic, so to speak, that has a positive message, such as caring about animals or something that supports veganism, for instance. If there's some sort of something in the smallpox replication strategy that can be turned into like some positive idea.
I don't know where you're going. Make love, not war. Never give up.
Well, all those are good ideas, but how can the process of replication be used for something positive? Is what I'm saying. That is what the smallpox replication.
I guess I kind of personally, kind of in the way I'm getting that you're going at it, I kind of rebel against it because to me it sounds kind of robotic and manufacturing and mindless, I guess. And that might just be my interpretation of what you're saying. So I'm just giving you a personal reaction. I don't.
Think anyone else? Artists?
When I was a small child, I got a smallpox vaccination, and it was very big and ugly, and I was kind of proud of it.
Well, I did drop that from what I was going to say because, yes, we used to go in, and I remember being 5, and yes, we would all be told that we were going to line up and get a vaccination, and it was kind of scary. There, of course, the needles, and there was always fainting involved. But it was fun at the when the scabs start to form. Everybody's scab is different. They're individual scabs. So I guess that's kind of me. Kind of go for the individual thing and the replicating thing. Yes, we all got the same vaccination, but it came out so differently. It was fascinating.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Christine?
Yeah, I was one of those kids that got them. I didn't think that it was cool, but anyway, I was just wondering, because I did get it as a kid, do I have to now get it as an adult?
No. You're good to go. You don't have to snort scabs or anything.
Anyone else? Great. Let's give Pam Bloom a big hand for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And thanks so much to everyone who participated and all the visitors and people who came to hear us on YouTube, excuse me. If you want to make a donation to the cost to help us pay for this thing, you're welcome to. You can throw some money on top of the piano over there. If not, don't worry about it. And we're going to do this again in about a month. And if you'd like to speak at a future one, just let me know. Or become an official member, and then you get to decide who speaks next. All right, great. Thanks a lot, everybody.